want to introduce to you our first session today. It's called Finding, transformation, right? Finding opportunity in the transformation, right? And I am very appreciative that I'm not only introducing to you Andrew Wrobel from Rhein Associates. To me, Rhein Associates is the rock star of the data space in the commercial industry. And Andrew is a very great data wizard, and we're going to go through his information, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions while we do that. Andrew, can you talk to us just a little bit about Rhein and give us your personal introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathryn. So as Kathryn said, I'm Andrew Wrobel with Rhein Associates, and Rhein Associates really is a leading transportation research firm. So what we specialize in is learning information, processing information, and then providing that information through insight and analysis to our clients. We have a competitive intelligence set that looks at the landscape as far as commercial vehicles go for classes 2B through 8, 2B being the Ford Transits, F-250s, Ram 2500s, all the way up through the full Class 8 tractors. Looking at on a nameplate basis, what does the powertrain look like? So when is electrification happening? When is hydrogen happening? All of those kind of new technologies, as well as looking at new markets. So technology markets, ADAS and autonomy, telematics, those sort of new trending technologies. When are they going to happen? How are they going to happen? And where are they going to happen?
That's fantastic. Let's jump into finding opportunity in all of this data that you've been gathering around the transformation that's happening around us, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, my goal for today is just to talk about the high level trends. Trends that we're seeing right now, trends that we expect to see in the near and I guess distant, you could call it, future. And really all of these trends come down to 6 points. And that's how the industry is going to align to get to the future, how they're going to align to achieve short-term growth, long-term growth, both in the total market as well as in specific segments, whether it's alternative powertrains or various technologies.
Great.
The biggest thing that we're seeing right now with OEMs, so all 6 of these play in very well, and hopefully you'll be able to see that through the conversation we have here today. But when you look at OEMs, we've got product availability there. And product availability is kind of twofold here, because we've got zero emission vehicles, the ZEVs or the ZEVs, however you want to refer to them, that are coming in as products that are available. But we also have, in general, product availability as an issue. So looking at supply chain, and we'll talk about supply chain a little bit, but we're not going to dive too deep into it. There's a lot of information and a lot of analysis around the supply chain issues. But that product availability really is impacting the industry, not just from the standpoint that you can't just go out and get any vehicle like you could before. It's kind of changed the way people have to buy cars, and it's changed the way that OEMs are providing cars for people to be able to buy. They're deciding almost on a last minute basis where the parts that they have are going to go to determine what products are available. So it's become very difficult from a short-term forecast standpoint to figure out what vehicles are going to be available, because it's completely different from before. It's OEMs are basing it on which vehicles are more profitable, which vehicles they can sell quickly, and which vehicles consumers and fleets are asking for at any given time.
And which vehicles they have parts for.
Exactly. From the electrification standpoint, over the last 6 months, so for those of you that were involved in the last commercial vehicle business review that Work Truck Solutions here put on, we talked a little bit about the product availability as far as electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles go, where it's dispersed right now. There's a lot of models that are available, and they're all very low volume, especially in the commercial vehicle space. The larger the vehicles are. That really hasn't changed, and we don't see that changing over the short-term horizon here. There's a
You have some
significant,
interesting information on the adoption, correct?
yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll get into that. We will get into more specifics around each individual
Yeah.
segment. But just as an overarching, adoption is really happening where there's an immediate use case for them. So electric vehicles are being deployed where it's easiest and where it makes the most short-term sense, maybe not the most long-term sense, because we have other concerns like infrastructure and regulations and that sort of thing. But that's really where adoption is happening, is in the vehicle segments and classes where they can quickly move to it, where it makes sense from a TCO standpoint, and where they can get or build infrastructure to be able to support those vehicles. And
Let's
that's all
dive in,
driven.
Andrew, let's dive into the details now. I think let's get into the meat of it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So when we look at zero emission vehicles or ZEVs, we're expecting 22% of all purchases in 2030 to be zero emission vehicles. Over the last 6 months, we've seen that increase about 2%. Most of that increase, if not all of that increase, is due to incremental volume. A big thing with commercial vehicles versus the light vehicle space. Light vehicle space has been very challenged for electric vehicles. The market's kind of been set, and the vehicles have had to come in and kind of share that volume. In the commercial vehicle space, what we're seeing is incremental volume from all of the startups. There's a significant higher number of startups in the commercial space than in the light vehicle space, and these are all expected to add some incremental volume. Not a significant amount. Again, it's only a 2% bump that we're seeing in zero emission vehicles, but we are expecting them to add volume to the overall market over the next 8 to 10 years. Continuing the trend from 6 months ago, we're still looking at high mix, so a high number of nameplates that will be available, with each of those nameplates taking a relatively low volume compared to the conventional powertrains. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but looking at hydrogen, hydrogen's kind of been a technology that's been talked about for many years. It's kind of been, yeah, this would be great if we could do it, where we should do it, how we should do it, that sort of thing. But it's really picked up steam in the last 6 months or so, as far as a discussion standpoint, maybe not from a vehicle deployment, but certainly from a discussion standpoint. And hydrogen is really expected to come in 2 places. So we have the zero emission vehicle side, which is hydrogen fuel cell or fuel cell electric vehicles, they're referred to. And then we also have it as a fuel. So as essentially taking the components that relate to diesel fuel off a diesel engine, replacing them with components that support hydrogen, and deploying that vehicle as a hydrogen fueled ICE or internal combustion engine. Cummins is the biggest proponent on the internal combustion engine side. They announced several months ago their fuel agnostic strategy for engines, where you could buy any of their engines with any fuel system that you need. So it could support natural gas, gasoline, diesel, or hydrogen. Just last week, they announced that their X15, the 15-liter diesel engine, is now going to be available as a 15-liter hydrogen engine in Freightliner as early as next year.
Pretty amazing.
It really is, and one of the big things there that we look at is production in place. So all of this electrification advancement is fantastic, but it's all a new production that has to be put in order to build them, both from a vehicle standpoint and from a powertrain standpoint. With internal combustion engines, all of the production facilities are already in place,
right,
making it easy enough that if there's small changes that can be made to those engines to support lower emissions, they will continue to be produced as long as they can.
Great.
Biggest issue for hydrogen that exists right now is infrastructure. California is really the only state in our country right now that has any significant, and I wouldn't even really call it significant, but has any infrastructure that supports immediate hydrogen deployments. And in general, the US as a whole is about 5 years behind Europe from a fuel cell or a hydrogen infrastructure. Europe's been able to make some more advancements there, so we do have some catch up. Infrastructure is expected to take somewhere between 5 to 10 years before we have something substantial built out. And one of the biggest concerns is you have the entire middle of the country that is a big question mark as far as how zero emission vehicles will deploy there, because you have geographical challenges with everything being spaced further apart. So vehicles have to travel further to on the commercial side to do their business. They have to travel further to get there, as well as the infrastructure. The infrastructure is really not there from either a electric vehicle charging or from a hydrogen standpoint.
That's one of the reasons why propane was proposed as a good fuel for more rural areas, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the big reasons that we continue to see such strong volumes for diesel, because a significant part of the country is, frankly, right now unable to make the transition to the full transition to battery electric. And one of the other questions that continually gets raised is on the utility standpoint, are the utilities ready for 100% electric vehicles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My feeling on this is no, but they don't need to be. Right now, they don't need to be. It's very targeted where the vehicles are going to be deployed, how they're going to be deployed, and that's only going to continue to build out the infrastructure on both the hydrogen side and the electric side.
Yeah, and we could have a very robust, long conversation about infrastructure for sure, including the concept that vehicles become storage for the entire system, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
But the big thing is vehicle use case, how they're used, where they're used, when they're used, will determine what the fuel strategy is, whether they stay internal combustion, move to battery electric, or move to a hydrogen fuel cell.
Absolutely. You know what, Andrew, next time we should look at specifically use cases and build kind of a model around that. Yeah. All right. We better get going. Go. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll jump in and talk about the specific vehicle segments on the commercial side. Light commercial vehicle, made up of trucks, vans, strip chassis. About 57%, the majority of the segment is truck. 26% is van. The rest is strip chassis. And why that's important is when you look at last mile delivery, that's one of the segments that is seeing a very large push in the direction of electrification, battery electric specifically. We expect about 40% of the van segment to be battery electric by 2030.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. It's not just that, it's also like you were talking about the fact that a lot of this is urban, right? And there's so many other reasons why a van as a vehicle makes a better vehicle in an urban environment than with turning radius and all of that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. When you look at trucks, we're only expecting somewhere around 8% to be battery electric by 2030. That's because we don't expect trucks to move towards electrification on the heavy duty side until closer to that time period, somewhere between 2025 and 2027 before we see both introductions and volume production will start to happen in that time frame.
And we were also talking about this right sizing of vehicles, commercial really moving down into the class 1 and class 2 area, but for the use cases that we're seeing, correct?
Yeah. So two trends that we're seeing there are vehicle availability. Sometimes you can't get the vehicle that you want in the larger size, so you move to a vehicle in smaller size.
Right.
But also right sizing the vehicle for the job. So in the case of last mile, where we keep focusing on 2B as a segment because it's easier from a regulatory standpoint, you don't need as many licenses to drive the vehicle.
Right.
It's an easier size. We're seeing some of those fleets move down in size to a class 1 vehicle,
Yep.
either a class 1 van or otherwise, or moving up, especially in the case of battery electric, where you have the batteries and electric motors adding weight to the vehicles, which reduces the GVW that the vehicle has.
Yep. In the last couple of weeks, I've had home delivery from a Cadillac SUV and a Porsche, right? So maybe that's a little too crazy, but no, I agree, and I think we're going to see more upfits for SUVs and vehicles that are class 1 that will allow for this specialized use case that we're transforming into. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So moving up into the class 4 through 7 medium duty. Again, trucks take a majority of that segment. Trucks there being chassis cabs significantly. School bus has been talked about for many years as the
Right.
perfect market for electrification. We're just now starting to see that actually take hold and start to see some growth there. We expect that to be about 40% battery electric by 2030. With the entire segment moving around 18% battery electric by 2030. One big item in medium duty that has the opportunity to increase that battery electric share is moving to e-axles. So just from at a high level for e-axles take the motor.
Wait. Tell me what an e-axle is.
Absolutely, that's where I'm going. E-axle
Okay.
takes the motor, any transmission or gear reduction and differential, mounts it all together on the axle, so it's all housed in one place at one location in a smaller footprint than what is traditionally input in the medium duty segment right now. Right now, most of the medium duty segment uses a traditional rear axle with the motor mounted remotely, either in front of or behind the axle with a drive shaft that connects the two. With a
I'm sorry,
transmission.
so an e-axle is replacing?
Yes.
And
So
it's not replacing the motor, or is it?
Nope, all it does is take the motor, the remote mounted motor right now,
Right.
remove the drive shaft and mount it directly on the axle. So
And
this
so what's the benefit of that?
the significant benefits are you have less rotating parts, so there's more efficiency on the electric motor. You have a smaller package. The entire footprint takes up less space, so you have more opportunity for, from an upfit standpoint, it makes it a little bit easier. You have more space to move around, and it allows better packaging from a whole vehicle standpoint.
Okay.
So weight savings, packaging, and efficiency are the three big benefits there.
Great.
So we're seeing e-axles now being designed specifically for medium duty. Right now, heavy duty is almost exclusively e-axle, but they have air brakes that can hold the vehicle. So adding the braking capabilities and the parking lockup capabilities that are required from a medium duty standpoint, we're starting to see those, which will drive more OEMs to use e-axles in the future.
That makes sense.
So stepping into heavy duty, Class 8 trucks and tractors, we're still seeing most of the adoption here being driven by large fleets focused on corporate sustainability. The other big thing about adoption is we're starting to see second generation BEV programs that are designed specifically around electric drivetrains. Up until about a week ago, almost all of the Class 8 electric products that were out there were legacy internal combustion engine trucks that had the internal combustion engine drivetrains removed and replaced with a battery electric drivetrain. The Daimler's e-Cascadia, or Freightliners, I should say, their e-Cascadia that they launched last week is a full program designed to be a battery electric vehicle. Same thing, obviously the startups, so Nikola and Tesla, if Tesla's ever makes it to the market, those are all designed to be battery electric vehicles,
right,
from the ground up. But from a legacy OEM standpoint, we're just now starting to see that. We do expect to see shortened design cycles, especially for the first 2 or 3 generations of these trucks. As technology improves and we start to move to 800 volt architectures and beyond, more advancements are made around efficiency within the e-axle, with figuring out exactly what the best gearing is to do. Right now, most of them use 2-speed axles or 2-speed transmissions in the axles. Do they move to 4-speed? As use case expands, right now these trucks are pretty much designed for regional haul. As some of these are used for longer haul or even potentially shorter haul or more specific programs, we may see specific design changes around those aspects. And then we talked briefly about it, but hydrogen is a fuel. So fuel cell and hydrogen ICE. Really Class 8 is where we're going to see that start to take shape, and we may start to see some of that trickle down into the smaller classes. But to start, the majority of that growth that we see exists in Class 8 here.
All right. So before we go through this, I want to kind of take a second and recap what I got out of the great data that you just gave us to give us a picture of kind of where we are and where we're heading. It really is that it's complicated right now. We don't have solid ground to be working on to predict, because things are changing and transforming so quickly. And what I just heard you say, as you went through each of the class segments, is that design is happening at a greater and greater speed. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yep, design, technology advancements, and enhancements are happening at a much quicker pace.
Prior to the last couple of years, what was the typical cycle time for the kinds of product changes that we're looking at right now?
The smaller the vehicle, the shorter that design time has been. As short as 5 to 7 years was typical on the Class 1 and 2 space, all the way up to Class 8. You could have some platforms that exist for 30 plus years.
So what are we seeing now?
We're going to move on the Class 8 side. We're expecting to move at least over the next few design cycles to a 5 to 7 years, similar to the light vehicle side, as these technologies improve on the battery electric side. For the legacy ICE, which we still see majority of the market owning, that will remain at that same pace. That won't change the 15 to 30 years on the Class 8 side. For the battery electric or the fuel cell side, we expect that to be faster as these technologies improve at a more rapid rate than we see on the internal combustion engine side.
Well, certainly the concept of any fuel type on a vehicle for a today ICE vehicle, that's a big broadening of opportunity, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's an interesting approach. What I see is, what happens typically in a transformative environment, which is people are, I wouldn't call experimenting, people are solving the problem in a variety of different ways. And I know I had, when we did our last commercial vehicle business summit and we focused on electric vehicles, one of the things that we were talking about there is, are there going to be companies that come out with solutions, right? And then they go away because there's too many of them. And what you've also demonstrated here is that hasn't happened. We're nowhere near close to that happening, right? That the demand is so great for vehicles. This is what's really interesting about our time right now, right? The demand is so great for any vehicle that success for new designs is almost assured, at least for a period of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your giving us the kind of background that kind of sets us up for the rest of the session. I know that this list that you've created here is really what we can't talk about. We don't have the time to talk about today, but that we're looking at being able to share in our October event, correct? So we've got about 2 minutes left. Why don't do you have any of these that you want to pull out and say something about? Or I know that you're going to be available in October, and we'll hear from the audience. Hopefully all you audience people are going to get a survey asking what you would really like to hear about the most. But which ones would you pull out as being probably in October, the top couple things?
So the big ones for me that keep coming up are ADAS, or advanced driver assistance systems,
Right,
and autonomy,
right.
especially as it relates in Class 8, have been very, very much talked about right now, especially from autonomous vehicles moving into the fully autonomous vehicles, the level 4 and level 5.
Mhm.
Specifically for anybody who has followed autonomous vehicles, SAE classifies 5 levels of autonomy. In Class 1 vehicles, in passenger cars, uh, Class 1 or level 1, level 2 are pretty much standard in a lot of vehicles right now. Level 2 plus kind of gets into that full autonomy of level 3, and 3 and 4 are expected to start coming. For Class 8 vehicles, level 3 is seen as a big no-no, essentially, because it puts too much control in the driver's hands. It doesn't put all of the control, but it puts too much control in the driver's hands that the truck can't do its autonomous job.
Ah,
So
okay.
most companies that are working in that space are skipping level 3 and going directly into level 4.
All right, well, that's a very interesting notation, because we've all seen those charts, right?
Sure.
So Andrew, I really appreciate it. Are you going to be able to be in any of our networking sessions so that
Yeah.
people might?
Yep.
Oh, I love that. So all of you keep an eye open for when our networking is going to take place. It's like speed dating for brainiacs, right? I'm really excited now that we're going to move directly into our next session. One of my